Hello, hello. It is currently 10:17 p.m. at night. And I don't think I'm going to record a full podcast because I really ought to go to bed and I am tired. But I wanted to say something, because I felt the doubt creeping in, as it often does. You see, I really want to keep doing this podcast because I love it. But there's a part of me that thinks I'm not good enough to have a podcast. And it's not easy to grab the mic and say that, because it's the thing I'm most ashamed of in the world. And I was watching a podcast with like Matthew McConaughey. And I was like, that's the kind of guy that has a podcast. Not a guy like me. Matthew McConaughey goes on podcasts because he says things like, all right, all right, all right. And I say things like, maybe I'm not good enough. But maybe that's my angle. Maybe that's my niche. And maybe that's why I make it. I really feel like this thing has potential, and if it doesn't pan out, it's because I give up. And it's not like I want to give up. It's because I'm scared that I'll be able to keep going. It's because I'm scared I'll run out of things to say. And I don't know where I heard this, but it happened when someone in my life was worried about saying the right thing, or felt like they didn't have anything interesting to say. And I don't remember where I heard it, but I heard telling the truth is always interesting. Being honest is always interesting. And I don't know why that's true, but I feel it in my bones that it is true. And maybe it's because this life just feels like a battle against fear. Because you don't tell the truth when you're worried about some nonsense, and it's usually not true. Usually you're attempting to read people's minds. And when, for some reason or another, whenever you attempt to read, oh my God, there's something wrong with my leg. But it seems whenever you try to read minds, it's like they don't like me because blank. Most of the time it seems that's what it is. And once again, proving the power of what you believe. Like, it's never, that person must think I'm great because blank. It's always thinking the worst out of fear. And I think where we're at, a lot of people let fear win. And I get it. Because bad things happen and it's easy to get caught up in it. And it's easy to get scared, especially when, like I was saying earlier, like fear comes up when you care. Like when you find out something you care about is in jeopardy, that's when fear kicks in. But also, like I said earlier, fear and excitement come from the same place. When you don't know how something's going to turn out. And I think people think they think, what if it doesn't work out? What if the thing I care about gets sick, dies, breaks? Like if you find out a family member is sick, it's like, what if they're not okay? And you think that because you care, and you think that because you want to plan. I believe that you think that because you want to plan for the worst, because you want the best. But it may be a mistake. Because you can't plan for every what if. Trust me, I've tried. And it's just not sustainable. Because the what ifs are endless. What if a plane fell out of the sky and crashed into my room right now? Should I plan for that? What if a UFO comes down and an alien gets 2 pieces of corn and he throws them and they miss? But then my roommate catches them and uses them to kill me. Should I plan for that? What if Muhammad Ali, I think he's dead, rest in peace. What if Muhammad Ali wakes up from the dead, comes into my room, and he goes to punch me in the face? He says, Wes, I can't do this. I'm not going to do this. Then he calls Mike Tyson to do it, and he punches me in the face, and I die. Should I plan for that? And that's why I had a friend of mine say something that stuck with me. I think it's safe to say it changed my life. I won't get into the whole example, but I was worried. It really seemed like something bad was going to happen. Something that I really did not want to happen. And he said, hey man, Don't trip till it's official. And it ended up not happening. And before I knew it wasn't going to happen, I was freaking out. I was distraught. I used to get distraught a lot. And I was like, my world is ending. I was convinced the world is going to stop spinning. But even if that bad thing were to happen, every bad thing that has happened to me, or I'll rephrase, everything I didn't want to happen to me that happened, the world kept spinning. I have made it through all my struggles, and if you're listening to this, so have you. And there's a quote. I pretty much got a quote for everything. I'm probably going to misquote it, and I'm not going to look it up because I don't want to. It says, I've known a great struggle. Maybe I'll look it up because I'm a good guy. This is the elevator music while I look it up. All right, quote time. Quote time. This quote is brought to you by Mark Twain. And the quote is, I am an old man and have known a great many troubles, most of which never happened. For you little dummies that don't understand that basic quote, you should be ashamed of yourself. No, for those of you that don't understand the quote by my brother Mark Twain, it's, I am an old man and have known a great many troubles, most of which never happened. And that is saying most of the things we worry about never end up happening. And I believe that there is enough things that do happen to worry about. And worrying about things that haven't happened yet is just how you drive yourself cuckoo. So feel free to do it. But if you don't want to, just remember, don't trip till it's official. Or the quote by Brother Twain, I am an old man and have known a great many troubles, most of which never happened. And that really, I've mentioned it a couple of times, I believe. But I don't think I've gotten into it. But many of this, I've gained a lot of peace from Stoicism. And Stoicism is only worrying about the things you can control. And if you can control something, you can do something about it. But if not, worrying gets you nowhere. And that is easier said than done, but I promise you that with reminders, it gets a little easier. And it can save you from tripping about things that aren't official. And this relates to another thing I've read a lot of books, I've watched a lot of podcasts, and I have a terrible memory, so I can't tell you where the things I'm saying come from. But maybe you could look them up, and maybe it doesn't matter. But I also found a lot of peace in letting Future Wes handle Future Wes problems. I have faith in Future Wes to deal with problems as they arise. And that way you can stop worrying about what ifs. But and this is, once again, easier said than done. But I'm getting better at it, and I've gotten a lot better at it. And it certainly doesn't help that present Wes is a pretty capable guy. And I think future Wes is only going to get better. Future Wes is my idol. I don't believe in idols anymore because I think everyone has their pros and cons. But my idol is Wes in 5 years. Because that guy's going to be great. And I'll tell you why. Wes in 5 years is my idol because Matthew McConaughey's idol is Matthew McConaughey in 5 years. All right. And that's the thing. You can't try to be other people, but you can certainly take parts you like. And that's kind of how I put myself. That's kind of how I have put myself back together. All these, it seems like I have a quote for everything. I didn't come up with any of this for the most part. I came up with some stuff. I have original thoughts, but most of what I even say on here is recycled. And that's because I'm taking all the help I can get. Life's not always easy. And I don't want to do it alone. And there's nothing wrong with accepting help, whether that be from someone on a podcast, in a book, or if it's one of your friends saying, I'm worried about you. I was just watching a show, and two characters said to another, like, hey, we're worried about you. And he said something that most people say when they hear that. They say, I appreciate your concern, but I'm fine. Especially men. And I think that's kind of my angle on this podcast. A man who is open about his mental health struggles. And open with his normal life struggles. Because in today's world, when a man tells you he's struggling, if that happens, which in my experience is very rare, most men won't tell you they're struggling. They tell you they're fine. And it's because in our world it's perceived as weakness. But as I've said before, it takes a whole lot of strength to be vulnerable in a world where being vulnerable is perceived as weak. I'm going to say that again. It takes a whole lot of strength to be vulnerable and risk getting hurt in a world where you know that being vulnerable is perceived as weak? I know we live in a patriarchal world, and what a lot of people don't know, and I have empathy for my sisters out there who in a lot of ways aren't equal. But one thing I think needs to be said and will help us level the playing field is acknowledging that putting another group down, in this case men putting women down, it hurts men too, and I hope y'all realize that. Men go through a lot just like women go through a lot, but men feel like they have to do it alone and they can't tell anybody about it. And that sucks. There's just an SNL skit about that. It's like calling your dad and you're like, "Hey dad, how you doing? Like, I miss you." And he literally speaks in analogies because he can't be vulnerable. Because he doesn't want to be perceived as weak, especially to his son. Like a son or a daughter could call their dad and be like, "Hey, I miss you." And they'll be like, "My car is far from you, and I'm sure they miss you." And that's their kind of way of being vulnerable without being vulnerable. And that is sad. Gender norms on both ends they limit people. They put us in boxes and just prevent us from being ourselves. And pretending, I've spent a lot of time pretending to be someone else, trying to be the person that everyone else wants me to be, and it's exhausting. And this is a part of that. I didn't even know why before I got into grad school, but especially for men with anxiety, and that is what I am, it makes it so much harder because I feel like men aren't allowed to have emotions. I feel like it's perceived as weakness, especially ones like fear, and anxiety is fear. And that fear gets a whole of a lot worse when you don't allow yourself to be scared. And I still feel weird even saying this. I don't want people to know that I feel this way, but I do. And I think, I met a guy this summer who was going through it, and I was like, "Hey man, have you thought about therapy? Have you thought about medication?" And he was like, "I know I shouldn't feel this way, but I just feel like I have to go through this on my own without any help." Because that's what a big strong man would do. Fuck that, dude. There's other people in your life who love you and want to help you. And I'm not blaming the men who feel like this way. It's just because it's the world we live in. And there's a Ghandi quote. I'm just I'm the kind of guy who can just quote Ghandi casually. And here's the quote. It's his most basic quote. It's, "Be the change you want to see in the world." And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm being vulnerable. And I hate being vulnerable. But I dream of a world where men can be vulnerable and they can talk about the things that they struggle with without being perceived as weak. Because problems become a lot harder when you take them on alone. Like, teamwork makes the dream work, baby. And that's why, like, the men's suicide rate is so much higher than women's. And this isn't even like woman's fault. It's everybody's. It's not everybody's fault, but it's everybody's responsibility to change. But all I can do is my part. And hope that others do the same. And that's just one example of focusing on what I can control. One thing I love about doing this podcast is I can just be radically honest, which I'm trying to do more of in my normal life. And that radical honesty, and this is like me being radically honest and putting it out for anyone who wants to hear it. And in some ways it's easier because there's no one else in the room with me right now. And that's just, I don't know. Like, I don't think there's a lot of people who would do this. Be radically honest and put it out for anyone who wants to hear it. It takes guts. It takes some nuts. It takes some kahunas. And I'm proud of myself for that. But something about it just like, it doesn't feel like anyone's going to hear this right now. And then I can just boop, click, put it on the internet. And see, I'm someone who is impulsive. And I'm not going to say I struggle with impulsivity, but I definitely could. But that is a pro of impulsivity. I do not have a hard time pulling the trigger, sending a risky text, doing something, and just being like, oh, it's done. And I think I got this from like not being able to handle like uncomfortable emotions, and so I just do something where I don't have to deal with it anymore. And there is some value to do it. One day I called up Mr. Nike and I was like, hey, you want a slogan? And he was like, yes, please. I was like, all right, fine. And I said, just do it. And he said, what? And I hung up the phone. But the value of just do it is you stop thinking about it. And like that applies especially to like indecisiveness or challenging fear. And once you make a decision, you can just start dealing with it and just like, that's like most of the time there is no right decision. There's only like the decision you think is right. And that's the best you can do. You'll never know what the right decision is before you make it. Some are easier than others, but still, you never know. And that uncertainty is scary. But you can't do anything about that uncertainty. All you can do is make a decision and ride with it. Another saying I think I already said, but it's like, don't worry about making the right decision, make the decision right. And that means it's, even if you make the wrong decision, it's never too late to make things right. I didn't think I was going to do a whole podcast right now. And what even is a whole podcast? Shit, man, I don't know. I like kind of doing like an hour. I'm about 30 in exactly. But there was one thing, at least one thing else I wanted to talk about. And I'll share it with you. So I was just talking about like challenging fear. That's one of the main themes on the podcast. And fear is the Joker. Fear is what makes you Batman. If you're listening, please do not tell anyone I'm Batman. I'm trying to keep that on the low ski. Preach. But fear is what makes you Batman. And what I mean by that is fear is what you're battling. Fear is what's holding you back. Fear is what can control you. Or you can fight it. And it's kind of like, who would the Batman be without a guy to battle? Just a guy whose parents died? Lame. Well, I think the Joker might have killed Batman's parents. And honestly, that works even better for my analogy. Fear has done a lot to you. Fear has probably controlled you in ways you do not want to be controlled. It keeps you from doing the things you want to do. It makes you think people hate you when they don't. There was a time in my life where I thought fear had ruined my life. But without fear, I don't know who I would be. Without fear, I would have nothing to battle. And who wants to watch a Batman movie where he has no opponent? Who wants to watch a fight where he has no opponent? Or she? Or they? I'm wildly woke, progressive, and inclusive. Who wants to watch a movie where the hero doesn't have someone like, the movie starts, the hero's just like having a great time. And then the movie, he just continues having a great time for like an hour and a half. You wouldn't want to watch that. And that is another thing. When things that you didn't want to happen to you, you can either see yourself as a victim or you can see yourself as the hero. And this is what the thing that you didn't want to happen to you that happens to you, that is your battle. And the way most people think, they might be like, yeah, that's kind of a helpful way to look at things, but it is truly, I don't think it's any less valid than seeing yourself as a victim. I truly don't. Because a victim mentality is like, oh, why are these things happening to me? I'm so unlucky. Like, what would your life be like if you never had to deal with anything? You just... And I don't really know where this is going, but we can go through it together. So say you're born a handsome person or beautiful person. You grow up You get every person you ever likes you back. Everything you want, you get. You get everyone loves you. No one ever dislikes you. You get your dream job. It sounds like kind of nice, but that's just not the way this universe is set up. Because in this life, I don't think you really appreciate the highs without the lows. And another thing is, everybody has problems. It doesn't matter if on paper your life is good. It matters what your life really is. And things that people really didn't want to happen have happened to all of us. And all you know is what you know. So the worst thing that's happened to me is the maximum bad I know. And the worst thing that's happened to you is the maximum bad you know. So I spent a large portion of my life invalidating my problems because I don't have to worry about food on the table or a roof over my head. But that doesn't mean I haven't dealt with things. It doesn't mean you haven't dealt with things if you're in a similar situation. And maybe some people go through more than others, but I don't know how much that matters. And I want to go back to you can't really enjoy the highs without the lows. Say you start school, first test you ace it, second test you ace it, third test you ace it, fourth test you ace it, fifth test you ace it, sixth test you ace it. Does that really mean anything to you anymore? Now let me give you a different scenario. You start school. First test, F. You failed. You feel awful. You're worried about being dumb. You think everyone's smarter than you, and you don't know if you'll ever pass a test. Second test, you study harder. F. The things you're worried about are coming true. You might be just dumb. You're worried you might just be dumb, that everyone else is smarter than you. But you try studying in a different way, and you get a C. And that C, it's not an A, but I'll tell you something. Compared to an F is what you were getting. You didn't know if you were ever going to pass a test, and you did it. And if you figured out how to get a better grade, maybe you can do it again. Next test, you get a B. All that hard work paid off. It's not as easy for you. It's not as easy for you as it is for someone else, but you didn't let that matter. You got a fucking B. A good grade. Next test, you work real hard. You work harder than you ever had in your life. You get an F. Because that's sometimes how life works. But you're saying, hey, this one didn't go the way I thought. I thought I had it figured out. But hey, I was on to something before. Let me try again. And you work your ass off. And you get an A. Doesn't that mean a hell of a lot more to you than if you just always got A's? And that says something about expectations. And it says something about tolerance. And one, tolerance is like, tolerance and expectations are why, like, maybe you were happy about that first day, but by the third day, you're like, meh. And that's, I think, where a little bit gratefulness comes in. Maybe you get that A and you look around and you saw that person who got an F. And you should be like, dang. I'm blessed that I do not have to work that hard and this comes easy to me. And that's how you let that A still mean something to you. And you should appreciate that A and you should feel blessed that school comes easy to you, because I think how life works is if school comes easy to you, maybe you suck at sports. And that same kid who was getting Fs is catching TDs left and right, swishing. Every shot he makes on the basketball court, he makes. Every slap shot, he goes top right corner where mom hides the peanut butter. Every stone thing he slides in curling, it just slides into that bullseye and it stays there and it never leaves. Every dart he throws hits the bullseye. And I'm not talking like an actual bull's eye. Like when you play darts, the middle of the board is called a bullseye, you idiot. But if something comes easy to you, you should be grateful. And you should know that other parts will not come easy to you. And that's because everybody has their struggles that they deal with. And that's okay. And honestly, it's a good thing, because what if we were all perfect? Like what? What would that look like? And us being good at different things is what allows us to help each other. And helping each other makes us happy. And it makes things easier for us. And like helping people, I think that's what it's all about. If someone were to say, hey Wes, what's it all about? I'd say, listen boy, stop asking me that question. But it's about helping people. And like helping people, I don't know. It makes you feel good, and it makes the other person feel good. Everybody wins. And The next thing I'm going to talk about is about living scared. There's a couple things I could talk about. This kind of ties in, I don't know where this will go, but things being easy does not make you happy. And that's where it's like a lot of people in this life are chasing after a bag, chasing after a lot of money, because then they might not have to work as much, or they can buy the things they want, but it doesn't make you happy. It's proven that money doesn't make you happy, and things don't make you happy. And just like convenience, it feels good in the moment, but I think you just get used to it. Like, say you really have to drive far to work, like 2 hours. It's killing you. Drives you, it makes your day, it adds 4 hours to your day every single day. But if it's to, like, say it's to a job you love, where you feel like you're making a difference, you're helping people, and that makes you feel great about yourself, and you're making a difference. And then you get a job offer for a job 10 minutes away, and you take it. And on that first day, you're like, you drive that 10 minutes, and you're like, man, I used to have to drive an hour and 50 minutes more. But not today. I got an hour and 50 extra minutes of sleep. And you get to the job and you're good at it. Maybe you're good at it, maybe you're not, but maybe you sold out. Maybe it even pays more money. But you're not helping people. Say you're a lawyer and you went from defending the little guy and you were saving people's lives, but now you just went to work for the richy rich who are in the wrong, but you were a great lawyer and you got the job, and so now your job is defending the bad guy, but you're making a boatload of money. And hey, your commute's shorter. So you make your money. You go home. It only takes you 10 minutes. Nice, dude. And you watch TV. And your wife asks, hey, how was work? And you're like, hey, I don't really want to talk about it. But you buy yourself a nice dinner. You watch some TV and you go to bed. And you do that for like a month. And you used to wake up and be like, I help people. But now you wake up and you can't say that anymore. And even though your drive's only 10 minutes, you are not excited to go. And then you're there for 8 hours a day. And you hate it. You feel like you sold out. You feel like you were making the world a better place, and now you're making it a worse place. And you drive home 10 minutes. But honestly, you wish it was a little longer because you just need some time to think. You get home. You no longer talk to your wife. because you stop talking about work, and then you stop talking about everything. Now you haven't made love in 4 months. And you order your food, but you feel guilty eating it because you've been eating expensive food for a while and it made you fat. And you're looking at Netflix and you're looking for something new to watch, but you've watched it all. And that just kind of makes you sad, because what kind of person has enough time to watch all the Netflix? And you think on back to when you had that 2-hour commute. And you wish you knew how good you had it. I don't really know. I think I had kind of a point on that. But it was... Guys, that wasn't a true story. I made it up. But I think it had a point. And I don't know. I'm a little tired. And I think I'm going to go to bed. Because I just wanted to talk out, and I got carried away, which is, in hindsight, I think it's a good thing. Because I have something that I can do when I'm feeling doubtful, fearful, or stressed. And if you are listening, I'd like to thank you for listening. Genuinely, from the bottom of my heart. And I know it doesn't even have to be this episode, but if I ever say something where it's like, man, I think I know something that would like to hear this, please send this to a friend, because I'd love for this to grow, and that's the only way I know for this to blow. But even if you don't, I love you, and I thank you for listening. And thank you for doing your part to make this grow, because I appreciate it. And it's not all about growing. I'm just happy if anything I said helped you. And I'm rambling now, so I'm going to call it. But I love you. Thank you for listening. And good night. Stay classy, San Diego.